Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Lemaire. I'm one of the programmers at the American Cinematheque, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our first ever Unreal Docs panel, which celebrates what we think are some of the most exciting and artistically inspired documentaries of the year, including Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets, Dick Johnson is Dead, and the docuseries How To with John Wilson. These are documentaries that really take documentary form to new and exciting places, and we're thrilled to have the filmmakers joining us to discuss their craft. Our conversation today is moderated by Matt Zoller Seitz, who is the editor-at-large at rogerebert.com and also the TV critic for New York Magazine. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to introduce our filmmakers.
All right, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it. It is an honor to be moderating this event, and it's also kind of unusual because I was trying to think, has there ever been a time when every single person on a panel was in my top 10 list for the same year? And the answer, I think, is probably no. We have Bill and Turner Ross of Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets, Kirsten Johnson of Dick Johnson is Dead, and John Wilson of How To with John Wilson. And we're going to talk about each of those individual projects and just kind of just the whole idea of nonfiction cinema, which I think to varying degrees, all three of the projects that we're discussing specifically today bring into question, I guess. So if we can start that by bringing in the filmmakers, that would be great. Hey!
Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Oh. How you doing? Excellent. All right, so I want to start. I'm just going to go around. The whole thing isn't going to be like the Watergate hearings, only the first part. But I just want to bring everybody up to speed. And if we can start, we'll start with Kirsten. I just want each of you to kind of describe the impetus for the film. Not so much the film itself, because I can't imagine anybody's watching this who isn't religiously enraptured by your work. But like, why this? Where did this come from? And Kirsten, let's start with you.
Thanks, Matt. And I will go rogue just for a moment and say, like, I am freaking out to be talking to all of you because I just have so much respect for my fellow filmmakers in the house. And, you know, I see their love of the game in their work. And we know each other on the level of like people who search with cameras. So it's really super wonderful to be with everybody. And you, Matt, thanks for that amazing list and like your taste. But you know, I mean, I like to go big philosophical on this stuff. And you know, what the motivation for me was just like, I really don't want my dad to die for real. And can cinema help me with this? Is there anything we can do? And because I think of cinema as sort of a process that gives us new ideas and gives us new possibilities, as well as being a time machine, I was like, I can try. So that's where I was coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of something that the founder of the site that I now write for said often, which is that cinema is a machine that generates empathy.
Yeah, I mean, cinema does all kinds of things. I don't know if I think cinema is a machine. That's one of my like, I'm like, definitely like there's humans, there are machines that are cameras, and then there are images. Right. I'm not sure which of the things are generating other things, but yeah, I'm really excited for John to start talking because I feel like his images like create a machine. Like he finds images and then they start to construct something.
John, let's go to you next. And I want to preface this by saying that I was kind of reviewing everybody's work over the last couple of days just to prepare for this panel. And as I was going through a couple of episodes of your HBO show, I was laughing really loudly at the Memory Palace episode. One of my daughters from the next room said, "Are you watching How To with John Wilson?" And I said, "Yes."
Cool. Yeah, I'm so glad that you liked it, and it's good to hear that it made you laugh. You know, that's some of the only audience reaction that I get, you know, in the pandemic is someone telling me that they laughed. So it's kind of it is nice. And I also like to echo, you know, what Kirsten said. It's really great. It's really great to see all you. But yeah, I mean, for me, I just kind of needed a place to put all of these images I was just like, I'm constantly shooting, and I like to have, just kind of, I just have this archive that's growing every day. And for me, like, to begin with, like the films were a way to shape all this material into some kind of structure that, like, the end result would be like kind of a self-contained piece of art. Just because otherwise, all of these like amazing images that I really loved would just be kind of disconnected and floating. And that's definitely part of it. But each film, I end up kind of working through something personal, and you're kind of witnessing it happening on screen. And I like that. I like that aspect of it. And I also just want I want to make people think about where images come from in a way, because that I'm filming it. And I think that's like a very, like, it's something that you don't really think about when you watch a lot of stuff. You're almost trained not to think about like exactly where the images are coming from. And I kind of wanted to train the audience to recognize the camera person as an active agent. But yeah, that's the short version, I guess.
Of course, one of the most famous anecdotes in cinema history is the Kuleshov effect. That Lev Kuleshov, to demonstrate basic principles of editing, put a picture of a man with a completely neutral expression, and then I think it was like a picture of a piece of a bowl of soup, like a beautiful woman and a bathtub or something, and putting the two together, everybody who looked at them said, the man wants a bath, the man is hungry, the man is horny. And it was the same expression each time. And I actually was thinking a lot about really all of you. I mean, and particularly Kirsten more than anyone because of Camera Person. I can't think of another movie, in recent years that has made me think about what filmmaking is to the extent that movie did. I mean, that was really something. But on a more earthbound plane, I was just watching the episode with, it was the memory episode. And there's a moment where you're thinking, you're looking at objects in the street, and it's reminding you of things that you need to get to the grocery store. And there's a giant fallen tree, and you said, "Oh, I need to pick up some broccoli." And then there's a shot of a dog taking a dump on the street. And you're like, I need to get Nutella.
Yeah,
And my question, I actually do have a question here, which is the shot of the dog crapping on the street. Did you get that after you thought up the Nutella joke? And also, how old is that? Were you hanging on to that since 1997 and you finally found the right spot for it?
That's a real dog. That's real stool. And I have a lot of footage of dogs kind of vacating, and I wrote the joke, those montages are fun for me because it's just like basically all my favorite stuff I could just write. I could just that's where I put like all my favorite stuff that doesn't really have a home anywhere else, like those like kind of elastic scenes. But yeah, that shit was from 2019.
Do you hold on? Do you save everything? Do you delete anything? Do you record over anything?
What do you mean record over?
Well, I mean, you have a shot of, I'm sure it's only the tip of the iceberg, but you've been, obviously, this is like a diary for you. This is like the equivalent of, a writer carrying a notebook everywhere that they go. And you must have an unbelievable, I mean, all of you, I'm sure, have an unbelievable amount of footage. But John, you talk about how this is something that is intrinsic to your personality and the way that your mind works. And you show us this extraordinary shot of a journal where you write down is that a real thing, that journal of everything that you do?
Yeah. We didn't really, we didn't have a budget for the kind of art department. So yeah, I mean, that was real.
What I'm asking you is like, is this like the Library of Alexandria, the collection of tapes and hard drives?
It's not that interesting. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but people accumulate a lot of other stuff over a lifetime too, you know, and
I'm not judging negatively. I'm just trying to get a sense of the scale.
are you calling me a hoarder?
Yeah, I just want to know how you label. That's what I want to know. How you label, how you labels. That's what I want to know.
It's very complex, and it's, but also kind of simple at the same time. It just takes a while. It takes a while.
Do you think as you are, I mean, how much are you able to hold in your mind? How much of this, of the, and I guess this is a question I could be asking to all of you.
Yeah.
You're saving things like as a writer, like I'm also a filmmaker, but primarily I'm just a writer. I'm just a guy who works with words, and I have folders and folders and files and hard drives filled with things that I've cut, things that I never finished, and I hold on to them because someday they may be of use to me. And I'm sure you have your equivalent of that. And I'm wondering, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I dug this out. Bill and Turner, you might like this. Here's the title for the movie I made with you guys, you know, and I hold on to all this stuff, and I have it's always on the back of a piece of newspaper, you know, like from that time, you know. And you know, you never know what you're going to use it for, but it's cool to still have them. But yeah, I mean, if you're talking about images, that's a different thing. I don't know. What about you guys?
Well, I want to hear the Ross brothers speak, but I will say
we're just fans over here.
Yeah. But I will tell you all that when I was, it's got to be I bet I was 7 or 8, and my nickname as a kid was Fred, and I had this idea. What I wanted to do when I grew up was I wanted to have Fred's Image Warehouse, and this is before the internet. And I just I imagine this giant space full of boxes of images that were just and that's why I'm John, how do you label stuff? Because I just wanted to be able to go into this space and look at things. And you know, I think that's something that we're all you know, we're all in common with, is this sort of pleasure that images give us, and the way that sort of images talk back and forth in our minds. And I don't remember all of it, but then sometimes when I see it, then I'm ooh, and then I can go back into time.
Yeah, we certainly had that impulse too as kids. It was capturing the fleeting moment, because you're so terrified that it's you know, without you is gone. And so we would, you know, as little kids, go around filming everything, you know, the weird guy on the corner, our grandmother, our friends, and I still have that. And
it's not just filming. We're just archivists in general. I mean, all the diaries and scraps and shards of our collective experience.
We were having a conversation yesterday. It's because the older we get, the more we analyze why we're doing this, and it's, you know, this isn't the whole thing. It's, I think, maybe only a little bit of it, but it's it gives you some sort of control, because, you know, as a human, you have no control really over anything, but it allows you the impression that perhaps you have some sort of control in the world. Like John, that moment in your show when the lady is interrogating you, she's you have this barrier between us with this camera. It's, you know, it's I really identified with that. It's the camera allows you control, the capturing the image, you know.
You're capturing the fleeting thing, but the thing is fleeting while you're capturing.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was wondering along those lines. In my notes here, I had a question for all of you, which is, does something that happened to you, or that happened in your life, does it feel more real to you if you have video of it?
Anyone?
I'm shaking my head.
Yeah, no.
Definitely not. I certainly, I know how fallible memory is. I mean, fallible is not even the right word, right? Memory is just it's a crazy thing. And because I'm so familiar with what happens to people when they lose their memories, I do have a sense of images give me access back into memory. The only thing I would say about that of okay, it's more real if it's an image, I do think the stakes are changed when you're filming things. it's a higher stakes game than just your average interaction. And so that I do think like the camera is catalytic, like things happen because you're filming that wouldn't have happened. So maybe you could say that's more real. I don't think so. I just think that like somehow the dynamic that is created, like in this moment, the red light is on, we've got 100 people watching, you're talking to us, we're going to say things. If we were all just hanging out, we would be talking in a whole different kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's strange. I mean, is it more real with or without the camera? I mean, I just like to, I mean, I like when I record something and then I can make it real for somebody else, you know, like that's what I like. Is like, I love sharing a moment with somebody else. Like I you know, and then that's like the best way to tell the story sometimes for me, is to just literally like have someone else see it. You know, because I like to make people feel things or laugh or, you know, whatever, and you know, and just share it. And that's, I don't know, I feel like video is the best way to do that for me.
Ever since cameras became very compact, like the visual quality became good and the cameras were small, I started documenting my life. And it got to the point where it was annoying to my family. And so I had to make a rule, which is events, family events, significant moments, with very few exceptions, I say I only take one shot and I limit it to 2 minutes. And that's it. And I don't do it again. I don't ask anybody to stand anywhere again, because I feel like, I don't know, I think I still have a hang up about the idea that if you are manipulating the world too much, then it's suddenly becoming fiction, or you're forcing it. I don't even know what I mean by that.
It's like, home video is funny because it's like, I don't know if people are, I don't know if people are shooting home video the same way these days. Like, I know people are definitely shooting like events and stuff like that, but like the way that you used to have to shoot, it was like a different thing. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but like, because I feel like the quality of the stuff that you shot like was just of a different quality back then. But I don't know.
You mean it was better, or simply texturally, color wise, whatever, different?
I don't know. I just think like the subject matter was just different sometimes. Like you would just film, just the novelty of like having a camera at a party. You would just film people doing the thing at the party, you know, just hanging out. But with like, so often with like, I don't know. I mean, I haven't been to a.
Do you think that people are more conscious of sort of mediating themselves in relation to the camera and the people who are going to be seeing it than they used to be? Are they more self-conscious?
I feel like, I don't know. It's maybe I don't know what I'm talking about here.
Oh,
I'm just wondering, like, I
totally
mean,
do.
I think you did.
I don't have a family of my own, so you know, I don't know what kind of impulse I'll have to kind of record it. I mean, like, you know, I have parents, but I don't have like kids. But
I think it's very different. Like Bill bought all the devices that we would need to go back through all of the archives of our family that is on film or video. If we watch through it through time, there's film footage of our grandparents at our age. And it's very specific because it was very limited, because you had a reel of film and you had to process the film. And so they made it fun and it was very intentional. And then you move to our folks, and our folks now have a video camera, which has a VHS tape in it. And they're just gonna walk through the house and like narrate everything to you. And yeah. I remember when my dad's dad was dying, he would just drive around town with a video camera and say, and here's what's going on downtown. And, you know, yeah. But then when you get into the cell phone age and you can immediately create images, and we're all image aware and we are all creators of images. I don't know if it's so much a cheapening of thing, but maybe less a meditative process.
Well, your daughter is the greatest example of this. She's like, you know, I'll like a great moment will be happening. I'll get out my cell phone. She's like, no, Bill, no. Yeah. Real life is more important.
Eyes up, screens down.
Yeah, eyes up, screens down. Like, true critic among us. It's really
Well, yeah, my kids have their moments like that too, where they're like, okay, not now. But I do think that, that we're in this sort of historical trajectory where it used to be that people didn't, my parents didn't have video cameras. My mother took photographs, and she, like you're talking about, Matt, like she posed us. And we were all like, we don't want to stand still in this, situation. And it would drive us crazy. And I was just looking up and trying to remember, Thomas Allen Harris made this beautiful film where he used footage of his grandfather, and his grandfather had a Super 8 camera, and he would run up and film the television every time a Black person was on television.
Yes.
Because it was such a rare event, right? And so I think, our relationship to being photographed, like if you go from, my favorite that I love to talk about is Frederick Douglass was the most photographed person of the 19th century, right? Like that he was photographed like 167 times or something like that. And then, it's like my children have been photographed like 40,000 times. Mm-hmm. It's just a whole, like we're just on a different order of magnitude. And I think in some ways, I'm relaxed about talking and being filmed in a way that my mother wasn't, because her expectation is she would be filmed once. Mm-hmm. And what she looked like and what she said in that moment really mattered. Whereas I'm comfortable with the fact, like, there are many me's out there, and giving sort of a partial, like, some days I'm on, some days I'm off. Like some days what I'm saying is worth listening to, other days, but there's enough of me out there that it starts to create this composite that I'm comfortable with, as opposed to one time only.
You remind me of one of my favorite quotes from Steven Soderbergh, which is when he passed 40, he went from saying, "I don't photograph well," to "That's what I look like."
Yeah.
Bill and Turner, I wanted to follow up with you on Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets, which a film that I was positively evangelical about last year to almost a scary degree. One of the things that was really interesting about it was just the concept of it. And I'm going to describe what I think it is, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But essentially, you wanted to do a documentary about a closing of a bar. You were trying to, I guess, determine where this bar was going to be, and there was some kind of a mismatch between here are the barflies we would like to be in this bar, but we can't, like, how do we get all of these incredible barflies together in one place? And so you kind of devised it almost, I described it as being almost like a neo-realist movie or something, but all of the people who are playing barflies are basically playing themselves. You've got a couple of actors in there, but it's not like you've got, George Clooney and Frances McDormand in it. I mean, they're people who've had some acting training, but it's not like they're, that's the main thing that they do. You don't have ringers exactly. It's, but they're all performing as themselves. Yet I also feel like they're not performing. And in the end, I don't even know how to describe it. And I just kind of decided to roll with it as a viewer. But what exactly are we looking at? And, I saw in some interviews that you guys did, and I hope I'm not, phrasing this in a like an unflattering way or anything, but you seemed like you got defensive that people kept asking you, is this fiction or nonfiction? And one of you, I think maybe it was Bill, had a quote to the effect of "everything's a fucking documentary" or something like that.
Yeah, no, it wasn't being defensive. It was just getting tired of the question, because when we come to each other with an idea, it's not like, Turner, I have some great grand idea for a documentary. It's, I have this idea. And so it's, how do we get there? And sometimes that employs, much more of a documentary approach, and sometimes that's more fictional. And this one, I think was the most fictional work we've done so far.
Yeah, these are conversations with each other. I mean, in our house, we don't think of ourselves as trying to break the system. We're just trying to exist without it. And so when we have an idea, we figure out what is the best way to get there. And for us, this one was not to go look down on people. It was not to go create an expose of a bar and alcoholism. It was to exist within a space that we have often found sanctuary in, and to bring together people who are very familiar with that world, and to hopefully create to hopefully create something, a window of empathy into a world that a lot of us understand, and give people the opportunity to present as much of themselves as they wished. And that layer of artifice for us was what was most helpful.
Yeah, we had to create a community, a safe place to like shoot with and not at, you know? We didn't want it, you would never want our cameras to be a judgmental. We want to be in the space, accepted in the space, and everyone's on the same page.
Oh,
But okay, the question is, what are we looking at?
we're looking at a movie.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, so let me try to sharpen that question up a bit.
Okay.
Why did you decide to call it a nonfiction as opposed to a fiction? Because when I look at it, I see, there's a long history of blurring the line between these two alleged ways of making movies. And I see this as being, if it's not the same thing as a movie like On the Bowery or The Little Fugitive, which is made mainly with non-actors, there's certainly like bumping shoulders.
Well, Matt, we were trying to play the game because we're making non-binary shit in a binary system, and we didn't call it nonfiction, but we felt that was the best platform given the opportunities that were presented to us. And so by being bad boys, we got more press than And the other thing is, I think if we pitch this as a true fiction film, you lose the magic. The reality is all of the people in the film are the authors of the film. And if you present that to the world as, oh, these brilliant directors put all these words in the mouths of these thespians, it's like it totally misses the point. These people were complicit in an experiment and really gave incredible magic to the experience and trusted us with it. And we made a composition of that. So
I had a rather lengthy argument with a fiction filmmaker about your movie, and they were kind of mad that it was thought that it was being interpreted in terms of as a nonfiction of some form. And I said, if they had gone into a prison and said, we would like to get a bunch of inmates to perform a work by Sophocles and we're going to film them as they do it, how would it be different than Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets? How is that a completely different experience? I guess there might be some minor distinctions, but I don't see.
Well, what's resonating for me, and I love what you said, John, earlier, of like, you want to make it real for someone else. You want to share it. And like, one of the things that's so beautiful about what you all did, Ross Brothers, is that, like, you created a safe space. And in that safe space, though, you were exploring each other's unsafe spaces, right? Like, which is sort of what happens in a bar, right? And like the alcohol is like this gateway between the safe and the unsafe. And, I'm thinking about this in terms of dementia or the ways in which a self shifts depending on, how much alcohol you've drunk or, what's happening to the deterioration of your mind. But you were just reminding me of when we were cutting the funeral scene in Dick Johnson Is Dead. And, those were my father's real friends who had known him for 50 years. There was a way that we cut it at a certain moment, and they just looked like, sort of extras that we'd hired somewhere. And if we didn't make it explicit that they were actually my father's friends in the film was less thick with meaning. And I think that's what's happening for me in your movie, is like the density of that film is so great because we are completely in on each person's presence. Like, each person is fully present. And for me, it's just also just like this fantasy as a camera person. It is so rare that you get permission to film in an entire community where everybody has buy-in. And it's only happened a couple of times in my career. And even then, people had different levels of buy-in, and you didn't always feel like you had permission from everybody. But it's like an ecstatic experience because you're inside a complex, dynamic world, and you're responding as a camera person in relation to it. And it feels okay. It feels like exactly like what you're saying. You're doing it with people,
Yep.
not always trying to gauge, is it okay that I film or not film?
Yeah. Yeah. Your funeral scene like really resonated with me when we saw it 5 million years ago in Utah. But yeah, it got me thinking about our film and the way you approach that scene. And I just, yeah, that scene was brilliant.
And you always make me cry.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know
that
I want
scene-
to.
that scene
You
was
know I
really-
want to make you cry.
Yeah, that scene was
Kirsten,
really well, it was really well cut. That made me tear up too. I was watching it the other night.
Mm.
Kirsten, I wanted to ask you a follow-up to the statement you just made, which is, if rather than putting your father's friends in that scene, you had simply gone to central casting and got a bunch of actors and never told the audience who these people were, how would the impact of the scene be any different? How would it change the way you describe the scene?
I mean, one, I think there are these ineffable presences in the ways we create images, and it comes from us, right? Like the like pleasure that John is taking when he discovers something, that is in how it is shot. And you know, the devastation I feel to hear my father apologizing to me that he's gotten dementia, like it is in what I am doing with the camera in that moment, right? Like I can't get the focus because my dad's telling me he thinks he's my little brother. I'm just like, "Ugh." And so it is connected, and it is not all expressible as many things in life aren't, but it is present in how of it's being filmed. And I think that's what, you know, we feel in the bar. Like we feel the ways that everyone feels about each other.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you can also see it in Kirsten, in your dad's eyes. I mean, when he's walking down the aisle, I mean, I mean, a look of recognition you can't really fake, which is like, which, you know, said more than anything. I you know, I didn't need to be told that those were really his friends.
Right. And I think, you know, especially in my father's case, and you know, maybe this is true for you all in the work that you do, but my father can't act his way out of a paper bag. You know,
Yeah.
if those were not his friends there, he would, you know, before his dementia, he wouldn't have been able to do it. Definitely in his dementia, he would have been like, what are we doing here? But when he is in the church with his friends and looking at them and listening to them, he knows what we're doing here.
Right.
We're confronting the end of him. That's what we're doing here.
Kirsten,
you're
you
not
mentioned,
asking anything more than that. You know, you're just asking him to be himself, and he's a very charming, wonderful person. You know, and that just it breathes through what you're doing, because it seems like he's having a very genuine experience, as are you. You know, camera person, and that's why I like those messy parts. You know, in your movies, because it shows that the human line is connected.
Yes. Yes.
Kirsten, you mentioned that the camera is catalytic a
Mm.
few minutes ago, and I wanted to ask Bill and Turner, how did that feel with a cast of Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets? How did they act when they weren't on film?
It just depend. It just, you know, just depend moment by moment. But you know, like Kirsten's saying, it's like it was a dream to be within four walls and you could just wander. So because there were two of us and we were just wandering about, it was a very live situation. You know, we cast it for people. We cast it with people that are, you know, accustomed to being at a bar all day long.
And
so
being
like
performers, storytellers,
right,
and having
so
space.
we missed tons of stuff that was happening at the other end of the room. That was great. That only later in the edit we heard, like on the mic. It was like, oh shit, you know. But we set up a situation in which we could miss stuff. There was no action or cut. You know, everything. It was very dynamic. Everything was happening. So you know, and it was really like athletic and like exhausting to like be in that scenario and have to be on for like but it was, you know, that's
We
what
also
made
want to
it
do
so
is
alive.
eschew any sort of performative stuff. You know, it's like John's stuff is great because he's capturing the beauty of the world in situ as it is, you know, and for us to create a dynamic space, now we can do that, but within that, everybody needs to just be. And, you know, that takes a number of things, time, comfort, you know, complicity, but yeah, because the camera has a lot of power, you know, if you point it at something, it changes and people are aware of it. And so for us, it was, you know, we needed to just be people in the bar as well, so that nobody ever felt like they were in the spotlight.
Right.
So you like you were the guys in the bar who happened to have cameras.
I mean, yeah, it's
To a degree.
yeah, it's kind of how it felt. But yeah, to Turner's point there, it's like it was a blessing to be, you know, if somebody got too performative, you know, we're thinking, well, okay, this doesn't work. The camera's power is once you turn away from that, and we could turn away from that because something else was happening over here, that person knew that, well, okay, if I'm going to strike this like false note, like
you're creating a language.
Be something I'm not, maybe that's not what they want.
There are many moments in the movie where we are looking at someone who is listening to a conversation or a monologue that is not on screen. And you stay on them.
Probably a clever edit.
Okay.
not always, but yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of that. Yeah.
Well, I guess what I was going to say was, you know, I think about moments like that, and I think about moments where somebody looks into the camera for a moment, and then there are scenes where you guys are visible. You are in the shot. Like, it's not a lot, but it is in there. Did you have any sort of ground rules for whether or not you could ask somebody to do something over because you weren't getting the shot that you wanted? Did the thought ever cross your mind? Like, how did you navigate that?
There were no explicit rules. What we didn't want to do was ever have an action cut scenario,
because that would just break the spell of
because
what
we put people in an artificial situation which needs to become real. So the more that they invest in it, the realer it becomes, and eventually they become the authors of their own narrative, so long as we don't disrupt it. If all of a sudden we say, okay, you know, reset, that's just bullshit. You know, what we were trying to do is create conditions conducive to these people to have a very genuine experience. So, you know, when you're getting wild emotional things from people, it's because they're eliciting it from each other and knowing the conditions of what we're in, and not because we're poking them and saying, you know, here's what you need to do. And, you know, for us, that's interesting. It's what we liked so much about, you know, sort of building through this nonfiction world. You know, we would go fishing in the world and spend time with people and in their lives until we got to a place of comfort. And our evolution further away from that is to create conditions for that, you know, something more dense, something more distilled, and, you know, to create our own New York City, you know, that we can all go fly around in.
You know, that's a beautiful segue, because I was just about to ask John if he could kind of look at this from a different angle, which is, you know, Bill and Turner, you're dealing with a single, once in a while you go outside, but mostly it's one interior space. And John is roaming over the totality of New York City here.
And beyond.
Are there any rules, and beyond? Yeah. Are there any rules that you set for yourself or that were imposed, you know, from without, regarding what you could or couldn't film, places you couldn't go, any of that?
For my show?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that, the only thing that was a hard no from the lawyers at HBO was vanity license plates, which I had a lot of. And that was one thing that I could not show. But I don't know what happened, but this season, I think we got our lawyers to agree to let us use vanity license plates in the edit. So as of this season, I think we might I might have everything on my wish list.
And that's considered like an invasion of privacy, or what is that?
I just think it's so weird. Like that was the biggest, like that was the most, like that was the thing that identified someone. But it like, I mean, every single shot is like its own legal kind of like calculation. You have to, you know, like it depends on what I'm saying and what I'm showing and like where they are, and all of those things together. If I'm not saying like if I'm not like saying anything kind of misleading about them or kind of defaming them somehow, you know, so it is a shot by shot thing. It's not a blanket kind of permission across the whole series.
Yeah, you're reminding me, I was shooting for Leah Walchuk's film Very Semi-Serious, which was about New Yorker cartoonists. And we had gone with this cartoonist to Central Park, and I was filming him on a bench, you know, he's watching a baseball game. And then I saw this woman washing her dog, like using the drinking fountain to like wash the backside of her dog. And I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. And so first I filmed her, you know, from far away, like not showing her face, just showing like a human doing this in a drinking fountain in Central Park. And then she sort of saw me with the camera, and I sort of looked at her, and I was like, can I feel like, you know, can I film you with my eyes? And she's like, yeah. So then I was just like, went for it. Like I went over and I was like, can I get a release from you? And she's like, sure. Well, then one of the PAs on the shoot like posted it on her Facebook like that night, because it was just like so extraordinary. This woman using, you know, a drinking fountain to wash the backside of her dog. And immediately the woman, like friends of the woman saw it, they tracked it down. And even though we had a release, they were like, you cannot put this out into the world. But it was so sort of amazing how like in the moment of it, she was good. Like she was totally like, sure, I'll sign a release. Like I do this all the time with my dog. And then, you know, sort of once she thought about it and once everyone was like horror, then, you know, it became impossible to show it. And I often think that about filming, you know, sort of people feel like things are okay in the moment and then they reflect afterwards or have, you know, other people reflect back to them. And then they're just like, whoo, no, I can't let that out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I try to get around that a lot of the time by like, approaching for a release, but also like giving them the option to see what the clip was that I had just filmed, you know.
How did you handle things with the foreskin expert?
It was funny. He did like some kind of podcast recently that I was listening to, where he was talking about his experience on the show, and he said he was really surprised and really shocked that I did not ask for a release up front, and that I waited the whole shoot to like, you know, do the whole thing and then ask for it at the end. He said like anytime he's done anything with anybody else, they've asked for the release up front because they're so terrified that like he's going to retract it or something. But I just like, I don't know, I don't really think that way necessarily, because like I don't feel like it's a gotcha kind of thing, you know. If this, I kind of, you know, with a foreskin guy, I could tell he was a bit of an exhibitionist, you know, as well as like an enthusiast like for foreskin. And you know, I knew that like I was there on his terms, and like, you know, giving him the platform that I think he wanted, you know, and hearing him afterwards, like he did want it, you know, and he's glad that the message is out there, even though it's nested in like a episode about furniture, you know.
How is the ubiquity of cameras, just the fact that everybody has a camera now by virtue of having a phone, changed your ability to shoot in various places? I mean, I was thinking about this, John. It used to be that, you know, when I would shoot nonfiction stuff like 10 or 15 years ago, there was a moment of tension when you entered a private space like a grocery store or a restaurant. Like you couldn't just interview somebody sitting in a restaurant, right? You know, without asking permission from the, unless you wanted to just hope nobody complained, which you could always do. But I mean, like there was always that. Now I don't get the sense that people are so concerned with it because there's constantly cameras going.
Yeah, I mean, but like, you know, I think we use a lot. I think we use the same camera. I mean, like I was using an FS5 for the most of my show, and I mean that is different. People do think about that as a professional camera, like to a degree, but like, I mean, anytime that it felt like too intimate of a space, I would just use my iPhone, you know. That's what a lot of the show is filmed on. And it just depends on what kind of tool in your kind of arsenal you want to use.
Yeah, I think it's often if you're working with someone with a boom operator, that's when it like, whoa.
Yeah, that always like
right, like that's
they try to like disguise the boom.
Yeah, but I actually, I mean, unfortunately, I would say in so many ways, I feel like there are all kinds of spaces that are off limits for us to film in anymore. Like the sort of corporate like attempt to control image. You know, you can't film in chain restaurants, you can't film in chain stores, like that. All of that is forced into this space where you have to be surreptitious if you're going to do it because they're trying to control their image. And that didn't used to be the case to the extent that it is everyone's sort of proprietarial about their image when it's a corporation or an institution. And obviously, I think, you know, some of these restrictions are in place to protect, right? So that you can't film children in a school without having permissions of parents and those kinds of things. That I feel like there's a much deeper awareness of what it means to be filmed and how it could possibly hurt you or help you, as well as much more familiarity of what it is to film. And I think like that's the wonderful thing for me, is that people understand what I'm doing in different ways than they used to, because they also film. They are also camera people, right?
A number of months ago, I rewatched this movie called Black Sunday from the 70s, the thriller, where the climax of it takes place at the Super Bowl, and they shot it at an actual Super Bowl. Yeah. And of course, this was the 70s, right? So they're shooting in, you know, 35 millimeter with Panavision cameras, and it was logistically very complicated. And obviously they got permission, all of that business. But the thought occurred to me that today you could get a very high quality image and probably usable sound shooting scenes at a Super Bowl. And not only would no one know that you were doing it, what could they do to you later if you shot a dramatic scene at the Super Bowl with there 60, 70, 80,000 people, all of whom have their cameras in front of their faces the entire time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they make you sign anything before you go into a football stadium these days. But
the NFL heard you.
Yeah. They're coming for you, Johnny.
They're just like,
nice. Yes, let's do it like that.
Yeah, this will be Halloween version. But yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't know, when you think back to like how excited like early documentarians were just to have like sync sound with their cameras, it's like, you don't really need much. Like, I don't know why much had to change. Like the fact that, I mean, yeah, you can just shoot it on a phone or something small. I feel like people shouldn't feel like they need to shoot on something really big all the time to kind of like capture, to get a captivating image. And it's also, yeah, I don't know. I really like the challenge of shooting in spaces that like try to feel like they have something to hide in a way.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, one example is just a film I can't show anymore because I got a cease and desist. But when I just, I wore a bunch of spy cameras into I was on Court TV.
Specifically a spy tie.
Oh, it's so good.
A spy tie, and yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll do something with it one day. But that's like the most fun I have. It's like I feel like it's like innocuous, like the kind of like exposure, but like for some reason they're extremely touchy about it.
John, can you explain your background collage?
That's what I was asking him when he came on.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a Mandela effect. This is something that was made by a Mandela effect kind of person on one of their websites. I forget his name, so sorry if you're watching. But this is all the Mandela effects. Like, this is a bunch of famous ones, like the Hershey's, like, is it Hershey or Hershey's, or the Mona Lisa, or the Monopoly Man with a monocle or without a monocle. field of like, there's a bunch of other ones like Tunes, Fruit Loops. It's hard to make out, but yeah, you know, there's a lot of them.
You're
And,
reminding me, we made a, so at certain moment we were like trying to imagine, will we need to create a virtual Dick Johnson? So we went in and we, basically they're like, well, you have to take, you know, sort of photos of him and like skin him. Basically you have to like get his visual skin and then we can wrap it around something. So we had this like amazing, like it's almost like a world, that sort of world map where the map is like flattened out. So we have like Dick Johnson's like hands are like unwrapped and flattened out. So we decided to make a blanket out of it. So we have like this great scene where my dad's like napping with like the skin of himself on a blanket, but it was just so beyond weird that we were like, yeah, I don't think that's making it into the movie, but you know,
Oh, okay.
outtakes, baby.
Are those
Like
for
you're
sale
basically
on-
pushing it into a David Cronenberg sort of direction with that.
Yeah, well, it is. Dementia is David Cronenberg. I can assure you that.
You know, so much of this discussion keeps coming back to memory, and of course that's a, you know, that's a subject in at least certainly directly two of the three projects that we're talking about, and I would say to a degree Bill and Turner's as well, because it's the idea of capturing something before it goes away. You know, that this is like the conceit isn't the conceit that this is a bar that's about to, it's about to close. It's the last night of the bar. And I think you shot it, what was it, 2 days or 3 days?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the ostensible story, you know, so yeah, capturing the fleeting thing, actually capturing the fleeting thing, but also, you know, the old timers in the bar, when they show up, you know, they're viewing life through the glasses of the time when they most felt alive. So the music that they play on the jukebox is, you know, from the 60s and 70s, and you know, it changes, and like ideas of time and self and you know, visions of America, make America great again, you know, just like I think for us it's less specifically about memory and more about, you know, perceived self and perceived time, and how we wrestle with that as it changes.
Hmm. Who do all of you, I want to just go around and ask each of you, who are some of the nonfiction filmmakers who are not here presently during this conversation that you look to as touchstones?
I know these guys are pretty good.
I was just, you know, I was just thinking of Jonathan Oppenheim, who died this year. And he was an editor, like just like an extraordinary editor. And I remember coming into the edit room when he was working with Laura Poitras on The Oath, and they had this footage of Salam Hamdan, who was bin Laden's driver, who had like a bag over his head and, you know, was being held captive. And it was like the only footage they had for a really long time to work with. And I just remember coming into the edit room and he was just like, he was so caught up in how alive the footage was. He was just like, look at how alive this is. Like, and it was, he was sort of always trying to figure out, like, you know, you're not making, like, you're just in feeling. Like, how do you transmit feeling to other people? And it was so, I mean, I always talk about Jonathan as like being a person he was always like sort of struggling to like figure out which word to say. And it was like watching a like goldfish with like bubbles, like oxygen bubbles. He'd sort of like look up at the sky and like reach around for a word. But the way he talked was the way he thought about documentary editing. And, you know, we haven't talked a lot about editing in all of this. You know, I've had the honor of working with the incredible editor, Nels Bangerter. And I think there's something about like what we're all like freaks about loving to film. But then what happens in the edit room is this other sort of like, you know, the way Jonathan would just be trying to figure out like, where's the really alive part? Like, I don't even understand why this is so alive, but it's really alive. And how do we like build something around this liveness?
Very cool.
Not to not answer your question, but I'm just saying, like, that's the filmmaker who came to mind for me was Jonathan Oppenheim.
What about you, John?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I mean, a lot of my peers inspire me constantly. I mean, I mean, one of the obvious ones is just, is Fred Weissman, who is just like this, he's still pounding the pavement, as like this like Yoda kind of character these days. And I just find that so inspiring to like, to be making stuff for that long. And, and I don't know, I feel like in terms of, I don't know, I still love like Louis Theroux and basically his entire kind of like all the stuff that he does. I think he has such a unique way of kind of like picking subject matter and kind of like spending time with his subjects. But yeah, I don't know. I always choke when it comes to this question.
Yeah, same.
I think this is where we would usually say, this guy, John Wilson, you may not have heard of him because you're gonna, but it's a little too late for that.
Yeah.
You all knew each other a long time ago. You know each other from way back.
Well, I have a funny story about that. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was passed a video of John's and I was in it.
Oh yeah.
And I said, wait a minute, this is brilliant, but wait, who's this person that was seemingly like around us, but filming me? What the fuck's going on? And
Yeah.
so, and I think Jess, our mutual friend, passed it. This is like 10 years ago or something. And I was like, this shit's brilliant. What is this? And then I got your email. I think that's how it started. And we've worked together a bunch since. But is that right, John? Or is that just sort of a nice story that I've made?
No, that's true. Yeah, sorry I didn't introduce myself, at the time.
Just being a big old sneaky cam.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably the way I'm going to meet a lot of people moving forward, is they end up in my movie and then they introduce themselves to me later.
Actually, I have a question from somebody watching this. It's kind of interesting. It sounds like in the nature of your films, with the frequent question of participatory buy-in and consent during shooting, that you are constantly wearing a producer's hat. Have there ever been any instances where the producer's mindset has actually limited what you could accomplish as a filmmaker?
No, because we've been the producers, which means that we didn't have anybody to answer to. So
I think what this person needs is, have there ever been moments where as a filmmaker, you're like, I would love to do this, but the producer in your head says, you're going to get in trouble if you do that and it's not worth it?
I try to mute that voice a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when you work like on making your own independent documentary stuff, you do have to, you do have to produce it, and it's a hat you do have to wear. But just try not to make it too hard on yourself, I guess. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that.
I make it incredibly hard on myself. I'm like just like the ethical dilemma question maker. I'm like, should I be filming this? Should I not be filming this? Does this person, like, I am always doing that to myself. Even when the director and producer think it's fine, I'm like, is this okay? That is like the name of my game. I'm always wondering, because I think it's really shifting sands, and there have been enough times when I have continued to film and then regretted it, that and this has to do often, like, it's different subject matter, but I think Bill and Turner are deeply attuned to this around what they did in their movie. It's like people's pain is real, and you don't know how deep and hardcore it is, and once you start to see it being revealed, then you ask yourself more questions about how okay is this that I am revealing it, right? And I think to John's point, there are some, like, people are hiding all kinds of things, and that shouldn't be hidden, right? That we need to reveal, and we need to, as a society, address like the sort of deep festering wounds that we're all trying to hide. But then there's other kinds of pain that people have that is theirs, and your relationship to it becomes very complicated when you're filming, and you are, they may perceive you as their ally and someone they can trust, but then all of a sudden they've said more than they expected to, and you're thinking about the possible implications it might have for them, and they're not yet thinking about it because they're in it. And that's why, I think there is this thing about time, like you do something in the moment and then you have different perspective about it later. So I don't know, I always like to play these games about like sort of how each person on a crew, and sometimes it's the same person if you're the director, producer, camera person, that you occupy different like time continuums, so that the camera person is in the present, but the producer or the director is like occupying the future in a different way than you are.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking, because we wear all those hats, like to me, that's a camera person decision. And so that the shooting of is the initial gut check.
Yes.
It's like being the priest in the confessional, but you have to remember that the congregation is watching, so it's like, if you're giving me this, are you sure you want to share this? You're trusting me with this.
But because that can be so, you can often swing and miss on that and only realize it later, like you said. And so that's where you get so many opportunities within the edit to make that call again, which is a huge blessing. And if the people around you as the editor, if that ever gets like too fuzzy, then we just go back to who we were shooting with and we have a conversation about it. Yeah, because I don't ever want to take something from someone. Again, I want them to be part of it.
It's always tricky, but of course, the flip side of that is that within this ethical questioning person, there's that person has to coexist with the journalist, for lack of a better word, and the person who wants to be present for the amazing moment, the incredible moment, and sometimes the painful moment.
Yeah. It's like I think a lot about how, I'm sorry, I just sort of reminded of like the time that I had to like mute the producer in my head was like during the finale of my show, when the pandemic starts to happen, like the producer, I didn't consult any of my producers really to continue shooting in these like really dangerous in retrospect, dangerous situations, but like in the moment I felt this incredible pressure to just like this, it felt more like Library of Congress stuff to me than like actual, like I didn't even know what like it was going to turn into, but like, I felt like I needed to make a record of it somehow, even if it was dangerous and like I was taking on the liability, just like I needed the archive of something needed to be somewhere. And
right. And I think, you're guided by your own internal compass in those moments. And like, you look at Sacha Baron Cohen making this last Borat movie, and it's like, they really risked their lives to do that. For real, risk their lives, right? But that was what they were. That was the choice they were making on a certain level. They knew, for them, the stakes were that high. I think,
It suddenly occurs to me that there isn't a single question that's been asked of the Ross brothers about these sorts of ethical conundrums that couldn't be asked of Sacha Baron Cohen.
I mean, I have huge respect for that. Yeah, because it's not just a joke. There's some shit that's going on there that is really interesting. And it's because you could other a whole lot of situations, but the most endearing part of his latest film is when he goes off with two QAnon guys and listens to them, and they think he's on the wrong track. It's like you're exposing things that are usually considered black and white, red and blue. It's just like and we're able to laugh at it, and that's how we're able to receive it. But I actually think he's doing some very interesting stuff.
Yeah, that was an incredible scene, and like to identify with it from the position of people making it, like what it would mean to live with them and be there in that, I thought was just like such an amazing provocation.
Yeah, it feels like it could have been an entirely separate movie. Just that one part of it, because I was thinking, like, how does this work exactly?
Yeah.
I'd watch.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, and I also just think about, this question all the time of, we've all talked about this here, this idea that you can feel somebody's pain, you can feel their feelings, and the feelings of the subjects are being transmitted to the audience. And I love that line about, it's the confessional, but it's the congregation is watching. I think that's
a good one. I've never heard you say that before.
I know. I was like, woo, that one.
I know it's great. But I just, when you said that, I flashed back to when my own father died in November of last year. One of my oldest friends is a documentary filmmaker in Dallas, and he called me to ask how things are going. I'm like, well, Dad died this morning. And he's like, you were there for it? And I said, yeah. And I told him, I described, I'd never seen a person die in front of me before. And I told him exactly what it was like. And he's like, wow, that must have been an incredible experience. And there was a pause, and he said, did you film it? And I'm like, no, Bart, I didn't film it. And then he said, I had to ask. And I'm like, I know you did, Bart. So that's what it is.
Something you just have to be there for, I think. That's all right.
Yep, exactly.
I just watched an incredible movie called Watch Over Me by Farida Pasha that follows some palliative care workers in Mumbai, I think. And you are there, like, with some families as people are dying, and it felt as if I wasn't even watching a movie anymore, because, like, what you're talking about, that is such sacred space, Matt, like the moment of your father's death, and it would have been anyway, but the fact it is the first time that you have seen a person die, like, it's just such incredibly unfamiliar territory. And to sort of be with these families where that is their experience. They're like, they have never seen anyone die, and then it's their parent that are dying, and somehow you're there. It was very strange. I suddenly was like, is this a movie? I'm actually feel like I'm in a ritual, or it's something else is happening, because this is so transcendent. It's like, I am not a spectator to this. I'm actually implicated in this. And that's where I've been trying to go with Dick Johnson Is Dead, is that it's an experiment in something different than only cinema. And so now I'm like compelled to do my shtick that I'm like, how do you guys want to die? Have you thought about it? How you wish to die?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you mentioned that movie. And I wondered if, I just looked at the clock and I realized we're actually coming up on the end here. I thought maybe as we wrap this up, maybe John and then Bill and Turner, could you maybe take a moment and recommend a nonfiction film from, say, the last year, or television show that you think was really interesting for one reason or another, something small that maybe people haven't heard of?
And tell us how you wish to die, please. I want to know
and how do you want to die?
Strangest combo question of all time.
Kirsten, I wish I could answer that. I think it would be a spoiler for season 2, though, so I can't.
Oh, that's so good. Yes, so good, John.
Yeah, the episode is called John Wilson Is Dead. No, it's called.
So good.
No, I.
Please call it that.
No. Your intellectual property is safe. You're asking like a movie within the past that came out in the past year?
Yeah, over the last couple of years. Just this is a chance to maybe to unearth some truffles for the audience.
I gotta think.
I'll tell you the one that I think of a lot is this movie called 17 Blocks by Davy Rothbart and Jennifer Tierra. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that, but that's 20 years worth of footage about the life of this one family in Washington, D.C. that saw an almost unendurable amount of tragedy, this one family. And it's extraordinary just as a story, but also the editorial choices. Like, I don't know where they would begin with the sheer amount of footage that they had and the time frame, and like the choices. I feel like I could spend the day just talking to the editors of this thing about how did you decide to put in what you put in? Like, that's always an interesting question to me as a critic, but particularly when you're dealing with like literally like 2,000 hours of footage or something like that.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I feel like I haven't outside of the films of the people in this virtual room. I feel like the movie I just saw that I really liked, which is not from the past couple of years, but is like this, like Harold Blank, Les Blank's son, made this great documentary called Wild Wheels that I had never seen before. It's like a documentary about art cars, and it's just like, it was just like candy to me. And you know, like I want to, yeah, I'd love to see something like that made again.
I want to watch some art car candy.
It's
That
so
sounds so good.
Like he and Les were going to Burning Man together, like and
Oh
following.
yeah, I guess there probably are a lot of art cars there, right?
Yeah. And wow. Yeah, we got to meet him, but not Les. Les passed before we ever got to shake his hand. But just so, always those guys was just so interested.
I got to do a profile of Les Blank, like, Jesus, I'm almost appalled to say 30 years ago.
Wow.
That's how long I've been kicking around with this, but he was a giant. And what a great sense. You can sense his spirit in his movies, that kind of generous spirit.
Yeah, he's there.
Kind of
He's a huge present.
Yeah.
And he's interacting with the world, and the world is interacting back. And they're just very beautiful, beautiful films.
What would you recommend?
Well, we've been watching so much from the past, and some really good ones. But I think in the present tense, we love Ramel Ross.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we love us some Ramel Ross.
Yeah. We caught up with him the other day, and it's just always an incredible conversation.
I really appreciate his outlook, very poetic and an intellectual approach to these things. And yeah, it's just, just like these folks, it's just looking at things a little bit differently, taking in all of the references and all of the source material and speaking with a different voice.
How would you like to die?
I would like to live long enough and well enough not to upset my daughter.
Okay.
Ooh, that's some recipe for living. That is so good.
Oh gosh, that's great.
Guess what?
Whatever it is, I hope
my dad's dying.
Yeah.
You gotta never die.
Hey,
I'm actually trying to find out where Viking funerals are legal, because that's
that'd be a good way to go.
You've always talked about that. There's something I'm supposed to pull off, which I think is illegal. John, you're invited, but
Oh yeah.
don't worry.
It's a Viking funeral-esque, yes.
Let's do it. Let's do it in the Gowanus.
Yeah, we can do it in Gowanus. Yeah.
See, we don't even need to burn you. We'll just set the Gowanus on fire. And
It's already.
Yeah. You've already been in the Gowanus, though.
Well, I was. Yeah, I think. Yeah, we were all born we were birthed out of the Gowanus.
There we go. All right, Bill, how are you going down?
Oh, I thought we just covered it.
Oh, we covered your funeral.
Oh.
Nice.
Did it kill you at the same time?
Oh.
Oh yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that distinction.
Yeah.
Wow.
What'd you say?
Yeah, just hopefully
in there,
hold
right?
on long enough, and hopefully it's quick when it happens. But
Fair enough.
What about you, Kirsten?
Well, I started this project and I was an if I dyer. I'm still a little bit like if I die. And then I went through a zone where I was just like, I would like it to be something that just makes everyone like laugh out loud so hard. It's like such an absurdist death that you all have to laugh first, and then like you can do whatever you're gonna do later. But that's the sort of wish.
of course she went out like that.
Huh?
Like, of course she went out like that.
Yeah, I mean, how good would that be? Be like, oh, PG went out that way.
And here she's gone. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think you can pull that
I'm
off.
sticking with that one for you. Matt, what about you?
I think the I think the ideal would be so that my obituary could begin with the sentence, "He died doing what he loved." But unfortunately, given what I know about how people died, that would be like he loved painting the garage. You know, like you don't get to pick that. So, you know, but yeah, I would like either heroically saving the life of another person or in my sleep.
Yeah.
Classy.
Anything between those two, I'm kind of like, you can have it.
Nice. Well, I
And
hope we all get our wishes.
Yes. And on that note, thank you so much, everybody. This has really been wonderful.
Thank you,
What a
Matt.
pleasure,
Good
what
to
a
see
pleasure
you.
to speak to all of you.
Oh, so good to see you
Thank you.
guys. Wait, I want to take a picture because I just like, I feel like I haven't seen you in so long. This is,
All right, we'll just end it like we're talking about. Here we go.
and then I'm
And
giving
thank you
everybody,
to anybody who chose to tune into this lovely conversation.
Yeah. Thanks
giving
everyone.
everybody my credit card information right here.
Oh, good. Nice. All right,
right.
that was great, guys. This was a fun little hang.
Okay, bye.
This was fantastic.
Adios.
Thank you. I'm sorry this has to end. This has been so much fun. But thank you all for joining. And thank you for your questions, Matt. This was great.